Bitcoin has taken a bit of a tumble in the last 24 hours, dropping just around 6%. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing my thoughts and opinions as to kind of what I think is going on with the price action of BTC. As I get into today's video, if you do find it useful and informative, smash that like button. If you're new, subscribe, and let's jump right down into the charts, taking a look at what is going on when it comes to the price action of Bitcoin. So let's jump down into the charts here. This is Bitcoin paired up with USDT. We're on the 1-day Binance chart. So as we can see here, we've had a little bit of volatility, a little bit of rejection. Okay, so we rallied past the 200-day EMA on the 8th of August. It was a fantastic move to the upside, but we did find resistance on the 50-day EMA. That did come in right here at 62,816 with a wick high at 62,745. Okay, this rejection basically pulled down the price action on the 9th of August, finding support on the 200-day EMA. After a brief rally to the upside, trying to find a way to break through the 50 SMA, that's the yellow line coming through the chart, and at the point of recording, that is sat at $61,654. We've seen basically Bitcoin getting rejected to the downside, setting lower highs here on the daily time frame. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't look like we are through the worst of that just yet, but this is kind of on the kind of shorter time frames. On the larger macro timeframes, things on Bitcoin aren't actually looking that bad, and we might actually see a brief rally to the upside before we have that next move downwards. Let's jump into that chart and take a look at that in some detail. So what I'm talking about here is we might see a knee-jerk reaction to the downside briefly, but ultimately another retest of some of these highs. And if we can break through them, we might find that we have upper areas of resistance that we can take advantage of before we get into those next big moves to the downside. But I want to kind of stress here that we are currently finding the 200-day EMA as our resistance, and our 50 EMA, the 50 SMA, are also resistance here for BTC. Now, we do see that we were hoping for a fifth wave move to the upside. That is no longer a viable option. But what we do have here is a 3-wave move if we take a look at it from this point of view. Okay, and this basically shows us that we've kind of topped out here. The next move is more than likely going to be to the downside, but I do think it's going to be short-lived before we get into those next big runs. Let me show you where I think the price action could potentially be heading here on these smaller time frames. So I do think we're going to be looking somewhere between 55,600 to 56,800. It's going to be this kind of pocket of Bitcoin's price action coming into right here. Okay, now this particular area is of interest because it is a previous area of consolidation that we had seen in the price history. But that's kind of where I think our next kind of moves are on the kind of smaller time frames. We're looking for this kind of knee-jerk reaction, just push us down, grab some liquidity out of the market, and then a big surge to the upside before we get into those bigger moves downwards. Those next moves, I think, if I go ahead and draw this on, gives us an approximate idea of a run up towards that kind of $70,000. Okay, it'll be a fantastic move. Now, we are, of course, looking on the daily time frame for a daily higher high. At the moment, on the price action for BTC, all we are seeing here are lower highs on this daily time frame, and that's been the case since March this year. Okay, and at the same time as having those lower highs, we also have lower lows on this lower range as well, again coming in from March 2024. So for Bitcoin here, we want to see a breakout situation. We want to see Bitcoin rallying up, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen necessarily just yet. What we are thinking, though, is that there's going to be a big move like this, and we might find this upper area of resistance once again. Although there's that potential for $70,000, I think the resistances are going to be real, and we might find ourselves with major resistance around $68,500. Okay, so I think we probably will fall short of that target. Now, the next big move after that, though, would be a big collapse to the downside, where I do think we're going to come in and set a new lower low. Okay, so we'll have a lower high and a lower low, in my opinion. Now, it's possible, of course, that we do have a breakout situation, and if we do, we want to be trading that where possible. Okay, so we look for a closed position on that new higher high on the daily time frame, and that is where we then go ahead and set a tight stop loss and target out, somewhere in that kind of range of $80,000, because I do think that's where we're likely to kind of go on the daily time frame. We want a minimum 1.5 risk reward ratio, so we want to make sure that there's a good area of stop loss as well. Now, that's Elliott wave theory in a nutshell. We are potentially, I think, actually looking for a break to the downside before we get into that next big run to the upside. That's going to be met with volatility across those different timeframes. Look for a small move to the downside, small move to the upside, big collapse to the downside. And that's probably going to happen in September, in line with the Federal Reserve pivot and all that kind of stuff. So what about other tools? Smart money concepts shows that we are in a bearish structure on our daily time frame. That's confirmed over here when we had this move on the 5th of July. That hasn't changed. Although we had some price action to the upside, we did come down into a lower low, and unfortunately that has remained very much bearish. Resistance, not only is it the 50 EMA and the 50 SMA, is also the equilibrium area for BTC. Okay, so be aware that we are looking for that break to the upside, but it's not necessarily going to happen right away. That price action, though, will be pretty significant. We will be looking for kind of 15% or more in terms of price action to the upside on BTC before we talk about those big collapses in September. Okay, so I still think our smart money concepts is very much true in the way that it is operating. It's also worth noting, if I come over to our CME here, so this is Bitcoin CME futures, there was a gap that was left behind on the 2nd of August, close position, and the open position on the 5th of August. This gap has been filled out with this most recent move to the upside. Okay, so that fair value gap, that CME gap has been filled out. Okay, so we don't have that to contend with or worry about now. That also happened to coincide with equilibrium, the 50 EMA, the 50 SMA, the 200 EMA, and everything kind of converging together. It's also worth noting in the coming days, we are more than likely going to see a death cross on the daily time frame for BTC. Okay, and that's because they have the yellow line, the 50 SMA, looking to come down lower and cross the 200 EMA. Okay, so expect a volatility. That's been pretty much the story of Bitcoin ever since March. Basically, a lot of liquidity is being extracted from the market. You have moves to the upside, short positions get wiped out. You have moves to the downside, long positions get wiped out. And it's just rinse and repeat multiple times over. Although we are heading down, and this is a bullish breakout pattern in the making, because I do still see this with a big new all-time high at some point. It's just not going to happen right away, in my opinion. Okay, so what else do we have? Well, we have stochastic RSIs. You can see here on the 4 and 8 hour, we are looking for upward momentum, and our daily is almost up in the oversold, but it's not there yet. This shows that we are more than likely going to see a surge upwards, and like I said, towards that $70,000 before we get into the next big moves to the downside, which is what the daily stochastic RSI is trying to tell us. We're going to come up into this range of overbought. We're going to be looking to move down. It's just going to take some time. If we turn the stochastics off and bring on the relative strength index, you can see that we're lower than the 50 level, which is this midline coming through the chart. And that's an indication that momentum is actually bearish for BTC on the relative strength index, which is less sensitive to price action and is better for trends. So here we can see that there's no divergences with the RSI versus price action. And we can see that we are unfortunately in a bearish place. Although we can, of course, rally, it's unlikely to be the case. And that's kind of what I'm trying to say here. I think we're going to see a small push to the upside in the coming weeks, but ultimately we are going to be looking for a bigger move to the downside, in my opinion. Now, I would love to be wrong on that. I don't want to be proven right. I want to be seen here to say that actually, yeah, we're more than likely going to see a new all-time high in the very near future. I think a new all-time high is something that we are going to see. It's just not going to be in the near future, but actually a little bit longer term. We can also see from volume profiles that as we've kind of consolidated here, volumes have dropped. That's why I think we'd like to kind of push down just a fraction more and then get a mini surge to the upside as volume spikes up and confidence comes into the market. But I think it's just going to be another liquidity extraction process and we move back down. Again, love to be wrong, but that's where my mind is at on this one at the moment. Okay, so when it comes to Bitcoin, that's kind of where we are sat in terms of our daily time frame. Things are progressing nicely, but they're going to take a little bit longer to play on out. Let me know what your thoughts are on BTC in the comments down below. Do you align? Do you disagree? Do you think we're going to be having a breakout imminently, or do you think the price action of Bitcoin is in trouble? Let me know in the comments down below, or join us in our free Discord server linked in the description. And if you haven't done so yet, check out this channel just here where I talk about a lot more technical analysis on a day-by-day basis.